Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. Today I've got what I'm hoping will be the start of a new monthly series. What I'm going to do is once a month I'll pick 2 inks, take a look at them, compare them against each other. It's a way for me to explore some of my inks which I don't normally do. I'm going to start this series off by looking at 2 teal inks. The first one by Diamine is Aurora Borealis and the second one by Robert Oster is Tranquility. So join me now down on the mat, let's jump on in and take a look at these 2 inks. So welcome down to the mat. So the 2 inks we're looking at today, we've got Diamine Aurora Borealis and we've got Robert Oster Tranquility. I love both these inks, they're very, very similar in colour and that's why I thought they'd be a good one to compare against each other. I'll fetch in my swatch cards. So here comes the Aurora Borealis and here we have the Tranquility. So as you can see from these, very, very similar. On these cards I would say the Tranquility, it looks a little bit more bluer, whereas the Aurora Borealis, it's got a little bit more green into it, but I love the colour of both of them. One of the pens that I will be showing you some writing samples from, and I tend to use one of these 2 inks in it now, is this. This is the Sailor ProGear Slim. This is in blue-green nebula. And if I can get these cards there, they're either side of it, I think they're a really good match for this. And I love using these inks. As I say, I've got some writing samples to show you in a bit. Let's take a look over on the back of each. What I've got here is I've done the chromatography. Now, they're not exactly identical. I did the Aurora Borealis when I was still really learning how to do the chromatography, so I left that in for a little bit more time, which is why it's spread further up the card. But if we look at this, at the bottom we've got a darker grey in the Aurora Borealis. We then go into some gorgeous greens. I would say here the green in the Aurora Borealis is slightly lighter, although when it gets up near the blue, it does go, they're very similar in shade. Then we've got some gorgeous blues. Now, on the Tranquility, it looks to me as if there's just like a little narrow red line right at the very top, which I don't see on the Aurora Borealis. So they're my swatch cards. You know, they're interesting to look at. One of the things with a swatch card there, they can be a bit misleading because the colour can look very different when you're swatching it than what it looks like when it comes out of a pen. So I'll fetch my notebook. Here we go. This is my black and red A5 notepad. It's using the Oxford Optic paper, and this is the paper that I try to use all the time when I'm doing my tests. The pen I'm going to use for my first test is this. This is a Serendipity dip pen. It's got a broad Yoho nib on it. I'm trying to standardise on this for all my ink testing, just so that I've got some standard line widths to compare against. Right, let's just dip the pen. And what have we got? We've got Diamine, Aurora Borealis. Let's look at drying times. So immediate, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, then finally 1 minute. After a minute, well, we've still got a little bit of a smudge there. Now for a sentence. There we go. Those grumpy wizards, I don't know what they've got against the jovial queen. Love this colour. I love the teal colour. I love the greenness in it. Just going to now clean the pen and then we'll come back and we'll do the Robert Oster Tranquility. So I've cleaned off the pen. Let's fetch in the next ink, which is Robert Oster Tranquility. In goes the dip pen. I'll give it a couple of good dips, which is what I did with the Aurora Borealis. A couple more. There we go. Make sure that looks like we've got a nice amount there. So we've got here Robert Oster Tranquility. Drying times, so we go immediate, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, finally 1 minute. After a minute again, I would say this one is slightly wetter than the Aurora Borealis. We'll do our sentence. There we go. So looking on the Oxford paper, we can certainly see here that there's more green in the Aurora Borealis. It jumps out at you on these swatches. The Aurora Borealis, where I'm writing, it looks a bit flat. Now, the name of the ink, that's when it's freshly dipped. So I'm not expecting to see too much there because there's still a lot of ink on the nib. When we get down to the sentences, you know, it's been left nearly 2 minutes by the time I've done all my wetness tests. I love the colour in the Aurora Borealis. I love this green colour. It's just so pretty. I see a lot more shading in the Tranquility. A very personal preference, I do prefer the green of the Aurora Borealis. I just love to see the shading. I mean, yes, there is a little bit there, but nowhere near as much as I'm seeing down here in the Tranquility. Remember, these were both done using the same pen, which was a Serendipity dip pen. And the only thing that's different, I can't control how much I dip. I do the best I can, but obviously, I may get differences in the amount of ink on the nib when I'm doing these tests. So again, bear that in mind. What we're going to do now is jump over and look at some photos I took from my Galen leather notebook. This is using 52 GSM Tomoe River paper. And as I said earlier, the pen that I use in it is this. This is a Sailor ProGear Slim. It's got a gold nib on it. So I've had both these inks in this pen, and I've used both these inks for quite a while. So let's take a look over there now. Now, some of the statements here, they're about the pen, so it's just going to be interesting to see them. Now, on this, the actual ink ran out as I was part way through running this. So I refilled it. So we're actually seeing two different colours. The one where there's very little ink left and the other one where it's got a fresh fill. You can see here it's wet. You can see where I've accidentally smudged a lot of the writing. It's a nice combo, but again, I don't really see much in the way of shading on this. At the bottom of the page, I've got a hash mark. Next to that, I've got a hash mark that I smudged. I have a scribble that I smudged. I try to show a little bit about line variation, and then the curly things, that's where I just try and make sure the pen and the ink flow nicely. Really nice, love this ink. I think it looks really nice in this pen. It's enjoyable to use, just not a lot of shade in there. Let's take a look at another page. This one, it's using the Robert Oster Tranquility. Remember, it's the same pen, so the comments about the pen will be very similar. I'm calling out on here in the third paragraph, we've got this gorgeous shading which fetches character to the writing. We saw that on the Optic paper. Down near the bottom, again, we've got our wetness. On here, you can see it is still slightly wetter than the Aurora Borealis. I do the line variation and then do the scribbles. So again, the flow, it keeps up really nicely. Let's jump back to the Optic paper. So what are my thoughts on these inks? As I've said, I love them both. I use them both in this pen. I use them both in other pens as well. I like that there's more green in the Aurora Borealis, but that's because I love green. But I love the shading. I mean, look at the shading here on the G, the B, the E, in the 4, in the Jovial, in the Queen, in Toxic. Loads of shading coming through. And to me, that adds character to my writing. And that's one of the things that I like to see is character in my writing. You know, if it's just plain old writing, it can look a bit boring sometimes. And I do think sometimes up here with the Aurora Borealis, where we've got little bits of shading, but only tiny. But where it's all the same colour, it doesn't really jump off the page to me. But they're my thoughts on these inks. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. What do you think of these inks? I love the teal colours. How about you? What are your favourite colours? Please drop a comment down below. Let's kickstart the conversation. Please hit the thumbs up button. Every time you like, every time you comment, just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.